Welcome and welcome back to Single High. Before we get started, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the bell so that way you're notified and you don't miss a single High episode.
It's like, I'm glad Davante Adams is going away from the Raiders.
Yeah.
If he's been there and not wanting to be there this whole time, you know, it's time to move on. We got our wide receiver one already, Trey Tucker. Bro about to pop off. Pop off? What's it? Pop out and
Sometimes you gotta pop out and show. Bam, bam, bam. Hey guys, welcome back to the Single High Podcast channel. I'm Louie, that's Anthony. Today we're going to be doing something a little different, a little bit of a snappier, more fantasy-focused segment, and we're going to call it Too Deep because obviously we're not dropping the Single High covers this time. In this, we're going to be breaking things down into 3 segments: Stash or Trash, Start One, Sit One, Drop One, and Thriving or Surviving. So obviously, I feel like a lot of channels kind of do. We're going to put our own takes on Stash or Trash and Start One, Sit One, Drop One. And then Thriving or Surviving is something a little bit more niche. I think that's going to be one that, you know, the viewers enjoy and everything. So we're just basically be talking about whether and why players and teams are thriving or surviving. So Anthony, obviously, I want you to kick off the inaugural episode of Too Deep. Hit us with your Stash or Trash. Hit us with your first one. We'll just get right into it, bro.
Yes, sir. I mean, you already know I'm a pretty good Raider fan over here. I like to watch the games, and one thing that's been going on the radar,
unfortunately,
right, is Davante Adams is potentially leaving the Raiders. So, with that said, if he's leaving the Raiders and if he goes to the Jets, the Saints, reunites with the homies, I definitely have to put Stash for Trey Tucker. He's been looking awesome in the past couple games. I think he has like near 15 targets, right? So he is being that deep threat. But they're also using him some packages where they try to get that short yardage where they just chuck it down to him and try to get around the corner, right?
Yep.
So he's looking pretty good. And just the guy has a really good attitude. You know, he's a guy that he's looking really good. The guy has a good attitude. Antonio Pierce really loves this guy because he's always like the hardest worker in the room. So Trey Tucker would definitely be my stash. And my pass, or trash you could say, in this case would definitely be Zamir White. All right.
Okay.
There's been a lot of issues with him trying to run the ball, right? And he's been on your bench most likely for the past 4 weeks if you have him. Especially if you're a Raider fan, you're even probably considering keeping him another week, giving him another benefit of the doubt, right? I'm saying trash him. And the reason being is because Alexander Madison ran for 60 yards last game off of 5 carries. And he also gets the receiving work, mind you. So he's getting those touches there. And PPR-wise, that is going to be pretty good. Why he's also a trash target in this case is because he just hurt himself hamstring-wise in practice today. So what day is it? We're on Wednesday.
We're on
October
Wednesday.
2nd. Yeah, he hurt himself in practice today hamstring-wise. Okay, so I'm gonna let him go. I'm gonna let him go right now. I don't think anyone's gonna pick him up off the waivers right now. So you could probably, if he pops off, you know, crazy for this week somehow, some way, you could probably try to get him on the waivers again if you really think he's going to be that guy. But I don't think so. So that's my stash or trash. Stash being Trey Tucker, trash Zamir White. What you got for me, Luis? What about you?
I like your stash and trashes. One of the big things that I noticed of what you were saying is like with Trey Tucker, Antonio Pierce has come out and said like he's a hard worker and this and that. Like obviously we had the business decisions quote coming out, and now we're starting to think, okay, that was maybe related to Davante Adams. And so like I think just like with teachers, just like with your job, with your boss and your other coworker, like at the end of the day the NFL is a job. So you know, being in with the front office, being in with the boss and the higher ups, like that's a big deal. So you know, Trey Tucker seems to be in that position. So I like that. I do like that. Obviously, you know, like you said, we see a lot of these running back tandems where one guy gets the receiving work, one guy gets the rushing work, and once the receiving guy starts overtaking the rushing work from the guy who's supposed to be the yard getter on the ground, like that's kind of rough. So yeah, no, that's very good. That's very good. For me, I cooked something up a little bit different, a little wide receiver heavy on our set. We're running 11-man personnel, but Garrett Wilson is actually going to be my stash. Obviously, if you drafted Garrett, you probably had to get him in like the first or second round. In most standard leagues and especially in like deeper formats, but so you're obviously not going to just drop him because he hasn't been playing poorly, but he also hasn't been playing well enough to where, you know, you feel like, damn, should I really be relying on this guy? Like, he was supposed to be your wide receiver 1/2. So I think what we're going to start seeing now that he's going to start getting a lot of easier matchups is we're going to start seeing his production going up. Aaron Rodgers starting to settle in. Obviously, there was that little bit of that miscommunication, but I have a lot of faith in a veteran quarterback, a Super Bowl champion, and a kind of a hard nose in like Robert Salah to a defensive minded coach to be able to get these guys on the same page and like start winning and producing moving forward. For my trash, I'm going with again a little bit of a dichotomy here, but I'm going with Michael Pittman because man, I don't know if I'm dropping him to waivers, but I don't think he's touching my roster, like my starting. I don't think I'm starting him anymore because most people had him just drop 10, 11, 12 points on their bench because nobody trusts him anymore. I didn't trust him. I have him in one of my leagues. I have to start him because it's an 18-man league. I don't have another receiver to start over him, you know? So it's this weird situation now where, like, if the beginning of the season, before the season started, before the draft, before everybody's drafts, everybody's like, man, I can't wait for the season because Garrett Wilson, like, hey, he's going to get Aaron Rodgers with a healthy shoulder. Like, imagine what he can do. And right now we're in this, like, inverse situation where, like, man, imagine when Anthony Richardson's shoulder goes out again. Imagine what Pittman's going to do. It's insane. It's actually insane. It's one of the first times I think in fantasy I've seen, maybe ever, where like we're actually waiting for production from a player when the backup comes in. It's fucking bonkers. So those are my guys. Those are my guys.
It's funny you say Michael Pittman too, because that's kind of a similar situation with Carolina, right? Andy Dalton came in, and now everyone's like, finally the backup got his shot, right? And that's a similar situation for Garrett Wilson. I think he's an interesting case, right? Because you are not gonna drop him, like you said. No. You know, you're gonna keep him on your bench at, of course, minimum. But in terms of trade value now, he's dropped from a guy being where you can trade Garrett Wilson 1-for-1 for another high pick, you know, whether it's running back or wide receiver. But now it's kind of like you have to package him because he doesn't have that ceiling that we all thought coming into the season. So because of that, it's kind of like, darn, now I have to give up potentially one and, you know, maybe my second other good guy, you know, wide receiver, just to get someone I can maybe trade up for, you know, because you can't package or you can't just single-handedly trade him for, you know, a better wide receiver like Nico Collins, not even Chris Godwin, you know. It's you have to package him, or if you want a running back, you 100% have to package him. So it's like, that's where we're at with Garrett Wilson. So I definitely agree with that. You keep him, but it's like you're thinking about ways to ship him off and see how you can upscale your team. But that's really where it's at until he starts getting those easier matches. And I think right now they're going against Minnesota this coming game. Yes. So that's a hard matchup because they have the highest blitz rate. Aaron Rodgers is going to be chucking it down and kind of doing his thing there because they have such a high blitz rate that will he get those long, you know, deep shots downfield for Garrett Wilson to be able to get those, you know, passes? We don't know. We gotta wait and see, and that's the scary part. So I completely agree with those. And it's the year of backups. It seems, you know, people hoping for those guys to come in.
Yes, sir.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I know for the start, sit, and drop, right? We'll be getting to that in a quick moment. But we definitely wanted to bring in one that we both worked on together. We cooked together. We cooked a little bit, all right? So we were thinking about this, you know, pre-podcast. Yeah, for our stash, right? This is what we got. We got Cade Otton because this guy has, I think, 17 targets in the past, like, 2 games, caught 13 of those. And we know Baker Mayfield is just throwing the ball, right? Yeah. He is throwing the ball. They're getting running game in now with Bucky Irving. We see that. He's taking over, like, the rushing aspect. Of course, Rashad White is still there, gaining check downs. But we are seeing trust in Cade Otton.
Starting to flip.
If you remember back, if you remember back to the playoffs, Cade Otton was heavily used during his playoff run, right? I think he was near 20 points or even more than 20 points. He was doing good. He was getting quite a bit of targets and catches. So we're seeing that trust develop now early into the season. And that's something where it's like, yo, do I got someone I can potentially replace Mark Andrews with now who's giving me 0 on my bench all the time? You know, so like you're in that scenario where it's like, darn, Cade Otton, that's awesome. Let me try to get this guy, you know, on my bench or keep him there on my bench because he is starting to look really good. And do I now start him? Is this a guy that's starting over someone like even Kincaid? Even do we think he's going to have a big game coming up? Because we're seeing just the land of tight ends looking a little rough, right?
Yeah. It's very mid, and I feel like the guys that we drafted towards the top like aren't producing. Mark Andrews isn't really producing. Travis Kelce, we're hoping now, tentatively with the Rashee Rice situation that he's going to start coming out of the woodworks and start producing as well. You just mentioned Dalton Kincaid. Sam Laporta finally had a decent night. So we're seeing all of these tight ends just kind of being put in a weird spot. I mean, Trey McBride got injured. Regardless of whether it was an injury or lack of performance, that's a 0. So, at the end of the day, like that's all that matters is that number is a damn 0. So, again, are we saying pick up Kate Otten? That's going to be your sit him and leave it kind of guy? No, but at the end of the day, like if you picked up one of these guys that isn't performing, if you drafted Mark Andrews and then we're like, I'm good, I'm gonna wait till the 17th round and draft some other random Okonwo from the Titans or something, like somebody random, maybe Kate Otten is actually the guy that you pick up, exactly like you just said. So another guy, speaking of another kind of rando that might have gone late in these rounds, is Isaiah Likely, who had busted out the gates. Insane performance week 1. Was Lamar's biggest target, was this far from winning the game. Like, the camera, that's the difference between his toe being out and them winning the game and them not beating the Chiefs. So everybody, waiver wire, if he wasn't picked up in your league, people were hitting the waiver wire, they're picking up Isaiah Likely. They're like, we got to get this guy, we're dropping FAAB on this guy. And then he's like, have you seen this man? For 3 weeks. For 3 weeks he's been gone. And I mean, we talked about it on the main cast, on the we talked about it on the parent cast where it's like, hey, look, the Ravens rushing game is so good right now and the defense has been so locked down that like they're not having to pass late into these games. So the passing game in general for the Baltimore Ravens is starting to kind of falter. Not falter, but it's just underutilized. And like even Zay Flowers is being affected by it, these other players. So Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, I think like both of them, I maybe we tandem this and it's like they're both just Baltimore tight ends in general. That's going to be the trash,
No, that's fair. That's fair. They have significantly dropped off, right? Yep. Especially like Mark Andrews, he didn't even start really. He hasn't even been there. But Isaiah Likely, he went from like 20-30 point games, something crazy his first week, to just falling off the map completely. And I know this because for sure, not only have we seen it, I spent fab on it, man. I spent like I think half my fab, or not half my fab, like 30% of my fab on Isaiah Likely, which was a lot, right? Because I was like, yo,
this guy's like a league winner, potential league winner type guy.
Potential league winner, week 1. All right, is this like a Puka Nacua scenario? Like, am I about to win the league based off of this now?
Yep.
And I'm not. So it's something where you have to come to realization where Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely are not going to be those threats that we've seen them at. And that's just reality because of that rushing game they are depending on. Now, will this potentially change later on in the season if they keep if they get blown out by other teams? Go 0-3 the next 3 games, maybe. But as of right now, they're a trash target. Just because if you're trying to win games, if you're trying to build your bench with possibly better players like Kate Otten, right, who are doing good right now, and we see a healthy target share, definitely, trash target. Yep. And I completely agree.
Yeah, for me, and just to like kind of rubber band off of that, like for me, perfect counter to that is our stash option of Kate Otten, because when you look at when you look at that as the inverse of it, it's like, okay, Andrews and Likely, if you're holding on to him, it's because of FOMO. You're afraid that 20-30 point week is going to come in week 12, week 8, week 16, in your championship or in your second like semifinals. But guess what? All those other weeks, they're giving you goose eggs. So it's like, you want Kate Otten, hey, he's not going to give you that 20-30 point game. He might, actually. But at the very least, he's going to be giving you some kind of production. So,
Yep.
it's money
Yeah, I
ball.
think his production has been around 10 points each game the past 2 games, which is like, hey, sometimes it's all you need to win these games and get into playoffs.
I climbed out of a 1-5 start last year, putting Michael Thomas in my flex, Mr.
Yes,
10 to 13, so.
Yep. Sometimes it's just about making it to playoffs and then just, going from there. Because playoffs can be a crapshoot, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But if you can make it to playoffs, all of a sudden, if you have the guys that were not going to be doing good, but they just happen to have their best weeks ever because they're fighting for a playoff spot, that's all you need.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah.
Right?
So, and mentioning Michael Thomas, and speaking of somewhat mid-wide receivers or people who are kind of underperforming, overperforming, I think it's going to transition us right into our start one, sit one, drop one. So,
Let's do it.
Obviously, everybody's anticipating us to tell you, this is the guy you should sit this week, this is the guy you should start with this week, and this guy maybe you drop. But we're going to do this a little bit like a FMK, a little bit of a, screw, marry, kill. So, I'm going to present Anthony with 3 wide receiver options, and I want him to give me his take on who he would start, sit, and drop. Brandon Ayuk, Brian Thomas, Zay Flowers.
Ooh. All right. No, that's a good one. Okay, for sure. Okay, maybe not for sure.
Right?
Okay, that was kind of hard. All right, cool. I think honestly, just if we're doing this off of pure data approach, right? That's all I'll take out, just data wise. Brian Thomas Jr. I'm gonna start.
Okay.
I'm gonna start him because I think last game he had 9 targets, if I'm not mistaken. In the previous game he had a touchdown, or maybe it was this game, I can't remember. But I just know he's getting the targets right now, right? We're seeing the targets heat up because they're always playing from behind.
Yes.
Like Jacksonville rarely has a lead, right? And they're 0-4. Yep. They're chucking it for the life of them, right? And we're seeing this not only in BTJ, but we're seeing this in Christian Kirk, where he started off with nothing.
Yeah.
And then now
I have nothing.
Up, right? Yeah, nothing. So now I would say starting BTJ. I'm going with him for sure for starting. I am going to sit. Damn. I am going to sit Zay Flowers. Okay. I'm going to sit Zay Flowers because I know we're talking about the passing side of Baltimore Ravens. Okay. But I have some invested interest in this because I currently own Zay Flowers. I think this is my hypothesis, right? Is that they cannot always rely on the rushing game. Okay. And Zay Flowers is a good, what you would call, flex option. Okay, because he is not going to be Mr. Consistent, always getting you 15 points anymore, or how we thought maybe going into the season. He's going to be the guy that all of a sudden they have to pass the ball, right? They are in a bad situation where the running game is not working. We are going to actually have to throw this now in order to get some stretch plays out. That's where Zay Flowers comes in, right? Okay. That's when he might give you that week of, instead of him giving you like maybe anywhere from 4 to 10 points, he's going to give you 22.
That's when Isaiah likely drops 100 yards.
Or that's when Isaiah likely comes in and screws it all up. It could happen. I'm just saying, in terms of like, flex options, I got to go with Zay Flowers. Okay. I got to put my money where my mouth is just because I currently own him. I'm keeping him for that reason because I think in certain situations, they're not always going to have that beautiful running game matchup, but he's going to be a good flex option in those situations. Brandon Ayuk, I would have to drop him in this just because he is not performing. Okay. Juwan Jennings is there. He's doing good. George Kittle is there. He's a little banged up, but he should still be there. Okay. Mason is still doing a really good job in rushing. And I think last game he started getting some receiving work, right?
Yep.
And I think if they start leaning into more to that, if McCaffrey does or doesn't come back, Mason is going to start getting that receiving work. And this is just, again, my hypothesis. Right now, I don't trust Ayuk. I don't. He is not living up to expectations. I think they did try to target him for sure one game, like 10 targets or something like that. He caught 5, right? He caught half of the targets. He's not getting that production. And to me, it's because he was out for the beginning of the season, right? We're holding out for the contract.
Yeah.
And it's starting to eat into this. And I don't know how the locker room holds up with that either. I'm sure they're perfectly fine with him, but I've seen videos of like the coach mad about the shorts that he's wearing, right? So
Ayuk like tossing him off in the practice is a little tantrumy.
Yeah, we're at this level of pettiness, between the players that it's like, all right, I'm cool not having him. Okay, I want the upside in Zay Flowers for those weeks that he will pop off, and I strongly feel he will. And I'm gonna go with him for my stash, and then for the start BTJ and drop Brandon Ayuk. That is my take on that.
That's okay. I like that. For me, because obviously I'm not gonna like present it to you and then not have my own opinion.
Yep.
Brian, I'm starting Brian. I'm sitting Zay, and I'm dropping Brandon Ayuk. I own Zay Flowers in 2 leagues, of 2 of my 3 leagues.
All right, yep. We gotta put our money where their mouth is.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, I'm starting him in both leagues. Again, one of them is the 18-man league. Like, I have no option but to start him. I have nothing.
Yeah. No, I think that's valid. I think we're on the same path on that front, and we just think also at the same time to save Flowers. Eventually, they're gonna have to pass the ball. All right, there's no way they don't pass the ball like how they've been. So, I got one for you.
I almost bought him. I almost bought low on Brandon Ayuk, like in week 2, week 3.
Hey, and we're not saying he's gonna have a bad rest of the season, right? It's just right now.
I just don't trust him.
Prefer. Yeah, this is who we prefer right now, right? So that's what we got. And I got one for you though, right? And this is on the other side of things. I got one for running backs. Okay. And these running backs are all doing good, but in their own ways. Okay. So let me list them out: Chuba Hubbard, James Conner, Breece Hall. What are we doing?
Chuba Hubbard, Breece Hall, and James Conner.
Mm-hmm. Think about the matchups. Think about how they've been doing the past few games. Upside, downside. How are you feeling? I think in most, if not all leagues, these guys are starters, right?
Yeah.
It's just who is really going to be the 2 that you would essentially keep.
Dang. Okay. I think I got it. I think I'm gonna start.
All right, go ahead.
I think I'm gonna start Chuba.
Okay.
I'm gonna sit Breece, and I'm gonna drop James Conner.
Okay. Why?
So I'm gonna start Chuba because Andy Dalton has this offense clicking, and Chuba has been just playing insanely, like to the point to where the Panthers are like, Miles? Who? Which, the first 2 weeks they were like still in this weird love affair with the 2 of them, and they've completely put him to the wayside. Like, oh, Chuba's our guy. So and I do think one or two things gonna happen, because originally like Chuba did get more of the receiving work over Miles, even in the early goings with Bryce, and so they're either gonna get out to a lead early, and then they're gonna pound the rock, or they're going to be playing from behind, and he's going to be getting the checkdowns. And they're still going to run I think people underestimate, like, when games get out of hand, even in the first half, like, teams still have to threaten the run, even though the other team knows they won't. Ultimately, they want to pass, they want to get the big splash play and try to get those chunk yards back. But you still have to establish the run. So they're still going to, even in a blowout, a team will still run in the first half. So he can still gain yards. He can still gain yards and gain fantasy points, therefore, in the first half. So I trust Chuba the most out of those 3. Breece obviously is a little bit more wishy-washy, but again, putting our money where our mouth is, I have faith that Garrett Wilson and Aaron Rodgers and Robert Salah are going to get this team going to a point to where like Breece is actually going to produce at the level that we've seen he can, that he can produce and has produced so far this season for the most part. James Conner, it does sound crazy, but James Conner's production, like we just talked about, Amari DeMarcado and Trey Benson, who have both seen work. Why? Because they're either blowing a team out or getting blown out. There's kind of been no weird... with the exception of like the Bills game, there's kind of been no in between. They either won big or lost big, to the point to where pull Conner. And you know why they're pulling Conner? Because Conner can't stay healthy. I know we just talked about this in the main cast with Alvin Kamara, but like I don't like unhealthy running backs, or like injury prone running backs. That scares the shit out of me. So to me, I know for a fact I'm gonna like not have James Conner for 2-3 weeks anyways. So if I have these other two guys, I'm keeping them. I'm keeping Chuba and I'm keeping Breece Hall, which sounds crazy because Breece Hall's coming with like a artificial ligament in his knee, but
Yeah. I have a different scenario on that because I would still start Chuba Hubbard. I would.
Okay.
He's a start for me.
He's frying.
Yeah, I would sit James Conner.
Okay.
Okay. And I know he has injuries. I know he'll be out for like a week or two or something like that at some point. But if he's not, that's why I want to sit him. Because in the chance he stays healthy, hey, bro, he's putting up like 15 plus points each game. I think he had one down game where like it was 7 points, right? But so did Breece. Breece had that last game where he put up 3 points.
Yep.
And he's most people's like RB1.
Yeah.
3 points.
I
he
won last
rushed
week because of
10
it.
times. Yeah, he rushed 10 times for 4 yards. Like, how does that even happen? Like, that is insane to me.
I have nothing.
And now they're going against Minnesota, right? And that, like, unless he gets that receiving check down work, I do not have hope in him, right? Because it was looking rough right there.
Okay.
And that was against Denver. Now, mind you, Denver is proving to have a really good defense. They are actually cooking, right?
Yeah, I picked
Maybe
them up off waivers.
So much. Hey, that's a dub, right? That's a dub if you got them off waivers.
And they're playing you.
But yeah, I would. Yeah, I know. Poor Raiders. Anyways, I would 100% sit James Conner, knowing these injuries, because also on the Breece Hall side, and why I would drop him, is because he also had that same scenario of people eating into his work. Braylon Allen actually did better than him last game, and that's kind of crazy. Right? And he's kind of like the hot hand for a backup. People picked him up off of waivers. They think like hey, Breece Hall ever, blows out his other knee or whatever's going on, I got a league winner, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of like similar scenario. So that's why for me, I know James Conner's probably gonna be out for a week or two, right? But he still is just producing. He's producing. Like he will not give me 3 points randomly, and at the same time, he gets the receiving work, right? He gets that work in when they need him. And he's also very touchdown dependent. Like he gets those touchdowns.
Yeah.
He gets those red zone looks all of the time, right? So yeah, I'm going with actually James Conner sit, and then I'm dropping Breece Hall, which is crazy to think. But these are of course 3 starting running backs, right?
Yeah.
But just how Carolina is doing right now, and they're upside with Andy Dalton. Now, mind you, this all blows up if all of a sudden they're like, nah, Bryce is our guy.
Yeah, if Dave Canales sticks to his guns and what he said of like, guys, this is just like. Which, God, yeah, it's such like a kid way to handle it. Like, this is just a timeout. Like, we're just putting him on a break. It's like, you understand how confidence shattering this is. But if he sticks to his guns, it's just like Michael Pitt, where we're like, dude, imagine when like Bryce, goes down and doesn't come back up for a second.
Yep.
Imagine what's gonna happen. Like, yeah,
dude. But yeah, if Bryce were to somehow get a start, all blows up. I'm dropping Chuba. And then James Conner and Breece Hall are my guys. But as of right now, Chuba's a hot hand. He's doing really good. He's looking good in the games, too. Like, they have a really good offensive line. And, yeah, no Diddy. He's looking good in the games in terms of how he's running. They have a great offensive line. I think they're ranked, like, top 10 offensive line for the league right now. They are doing really good. Yeah, whether it's in, like, pass protection or run blocking, they are doing good.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, those wheels are turning. Hopefully we can get some dubs, but even without them winning the games, in their losses, it's still producing, right, fantasy-wise. So it's like, hey, that's where I'm at. We are trying to get to playoffs. We are trying to win leagues. This is what we're doing, right?
Yep.
That's what I got. Yeah.
I think the week. Cool. I think it was week 2, the week that he got the week after he got benched, or the week before he got benched. Bryce Young had like 5 pressures the entire game, and still. Played like
he's pressuring himself, bro.
Yeah, yeah. It's just terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if it shows 5 pressures because he has a 100% pressure on himself. Like that is crazy to think about. Like he is just like, someone's there, but then that someone is him, bro. Like he can't make those throws. So it is what it is. It is what it is. That.
All right, cool. So
yes, sir.
So he's surviving them ghosts. And speaking of surviving. Thriving and surviving. So, I'm gonna let you go first because you've been cooking. So, I want you to give me your player, and I want you to let me know whether they're thriving or surviving.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All right, so Jonathan Brooks
Okay.
is an interesting player. Okay, and to me right now, just because of how good Carolina is moving the ball with Chuba Hubbard, I'm tagging him as surviving because he is most likely on your IR spot. They didn't activate him this week,
Yeah.
right? He's going to be getting activated maybe next week or the following. Um, but even when he's activated, I don't think he has that same appeal of, oh, this guy is going to save my league.
Yeah.
You know, because Chuba Hubbard is there. He is not going to go anywhere unless barring injury. You know,
Yeah.
at most, you know, is he going to be a guy that's behind Miles Sanders? And that's crazy to think about because he's coming off an ACL tear, right?
Yeah.
And he has to work his way up, understand the whole system and everything that's going on, get the reps in practice, and build up from there. And I don't trust him being, you know, this season above Miles Sanders yet. As of, you know, maybe leading into playoffs. Maybe once it's playoffs, you know, around those weeks, like let's say after week 10, maybe he's above Miles Sanders. But even then, it's going to be a RBBC where he's sharing time with Chuba Hubbard, right? Because he's doing good. Chuba Hubbard is taking over that spot. And right now, if you are a Jonathan Brooks owner, it's kind of at that point where it's like, darn, I see Chuba, like, you know, popping off over there. I'm going to keep this guy probably for, like, you know, a few weeks after he comes back if I have the bench spot to even support that time frame. And, one, who am I going to, you know, replace from the bench?
Yeah.
Like, who's going?
Is it
And at the
another
same
handcuff?
time-
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Do we end up in, like, a Jalen Wright scenario where it's like Miami? You had him on your bench? You know, you kept him because he's like, oh, dude, this guy runs like a 4.2, 4.3. He's crazy fast. Miami loves fast. But you see him putting up, like, you know, single-digit numbers. And it's kind of like you would probably only give Jonathan Brooks about, you know, 2 to 3 weeks.
And then he's
And
gone.
that's it. Like, you can't trust him. You can't waste that bench spot. To me, he is surviving. And he's only surviving just because he's barely coming off IR. Right?
Like
We got to
that.
see what he does, you know, but I don't think he's going to be that powerhouse people think.
No.
I don't think he got that in for this season. Next season, different story. This season, right now,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think if it's dynasty, obviously, like, leagues matter. A lot of times when we're talking about, you know, even on the main cast and here on the companion cast, like, a lot of it is revolved around redraft because that's the format that we play. I do feel like naturally the conversation will start transitioning a little bit more to dynasty as we turn our redraft league into a dynasty league within the next coming years. But, like, yeah, like, obviously if it's dynasty, you know, you're dropping somebody that's not producing, but, like, you know, like a popular drop in, like, a lot of, like, standard or, you know, shallower leagues of, like, 8, 10, 12 man, like, 8, 10 man leagues is, like, Roma Dunze is on waivers right now.
Yeah.
If you're playing dynasty, there's no chance, there's not a snowball's chance in hell that Roma Dunze is on waivers. Jonathan Brooks is the same thing. So, like, but obviously in redraft, like, this is just a dead spot. It's just a waste of space, you know?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
that's
And I do
good.
got
I like that.
I do got one for thriving, and this one's obvious. This one we don't need to take too much time in. Washington Commanders. Thriving.
Okay.
They are doing great under Jane Daniels. McLaurin is getting the passes, the deep passes over there, catching touchdowns. He's doing great, right? And we're seeing that team kind of like churn, or not churn, but just like produce on all levels.
Yeah.
Right? You are seeing Bijan Robinson popping off, you know,
Right.
getting, I think, or Brian Robinson, not Bijan,
Yeah.
my bad. Brian
you're
Robinson. All right. He's getting, you know, consistently above 12 fantasy points, even nearing 20 most of the time, or even over 20. He's doing great. And this team is just hitting on all cylinders. Now, mind you, their weak point is defense, but thriving as a team, Washington. They're 3-1. I think they're going against, I can't remember what team they're going against. It should be a close game. I can't remember which one. But yeah, they're thriving. That's my take
New York
for,
Giants.
you know, New York Giants. Thank you. That should be, it'd probably be a Washington win in my opinion. I would pick them to win that.
Oh, no. I'm
yeah,
saying
they're
that
doing
was the
great.
close game that they had.
Oh, that was
That
a
was the
close
close
game
game
that
that they had. It
Yeah.
was
Yeah,
like
yeah.
18-15. But
Yeah.
I think Jaden
Well, that
Jaden
game
Daniels
in
was still
Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And even then Cincinnati brought it back late.
Yeah.
But yeah, from my picks, because I'm kind of going a little bit more vague, and I feel like there's guys that are like kind of teetering, and then I'll try to guide you along the way. So Dallas Goddard, my guy. So I feel like he is obviously currently thriving, but we've got AJ Brown coming back. They're on a bye week right now. We're on a bye week, but AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, by all intents and purposes, should be healthy after the bye week. So like AJ was already almost gonna play against Tampa. Devontae obviously in concussion protocol. Very seldomly do we see a guy come back within the week, especially when they're injured during the game on Sunday. Like, so to see his production over the last 2 weeks, if you're a Dallas Goedert owner, you're like, oh man, this is insane. This is awesome. That's more than likely just gonna go away the moment those two guys hit the field. Once you see 6 and 11 on the field, that's Dallas Goedert owners 9-11. So, like, I mean, it's gonna be bad. I would try to sell high on him, maybe, here in the bye week. You know, try to get somebody who is, like, in desperate need for a tight end and hoping that he's going to keep that production up and hoping that these last 2 weeks is maybe an eye-opener for Jalen of, like, I really don't have to toss to Smitty and AJ deep if I got Dallas over the middle. You know, but I do think he's thriving right now. But my overall consensus opinion is I would actually say he's surviving in a weird way. Considering another, I had an original pick for my team, but I'm actually going to swap it, and I'm going to give another surviving, and that is the Atlanta Falcons. I think this is a team that a lot of people were high on. Obviously, they paid $180 million to Kirk Cousins in the offseason. People saw Darnell Mooney. People saw Kyle Pitts. People saw Drake London, and those guys all got drafted relatively high. I don't think Darnell Mooney went in a lot of drafts. I don't think Darnell Mooney was on anybody's board before before that signing happened. Like, I don't think anybody gave a shit about Darnell Mooney. So to see that alone tells you the kind of hype that was around this team. So obviously we enter week 1. They play the Steelers, which was the original team that I had for Surviving and Thriving. And it's a close loss. And then they play us, and it's a close win. Then they play the Chiefs, and it's a close loss. And then they play the Saints. And so we start seeing this trend of, like, eventually the participation trophies are going to go away. Because whether or not they almost beat the Chiefs and whether or not they almost beat the Steelers, at the end of the season, those almost, like, you don't get half points. You get a 0. Actually, even better, you get a 1 in the loss column. So, regardless of the facts, currently speaking, the Atlanta Falcons, you know, are 2-2, which I don't think most people wouldn't have had them here. I think most people right now would have gone, they beat the Steelers. They would have had them here, but by different means. Beat the Steelers, beat the Saints, lose to the Eagles and the Chiefs. But they stole a game from us, and then they stole a game, and then they barely lose to the Chiefs. So I think a lot of people are high on them, maybe still, and maybe viewing it as like, look, guys, they almost beat these good teams. But eventually, like I said, those almost are going to become nadas. As in, they did nada beat the fucking team that they almost beat. So.
That's a good one. You know what's interesting is I always still think that somehow Bijan Robinson is just being underutilized. And I don't know if that's a hot take or a mild take.
No.
Just because you see other running backs that are RB1s in their system, and they're being heavily used, right? You see Derrick Henry, even when the coach said, we're not trying to get him 1,000 yards or didn't expect it, bro, he's being taken everywhere, right?
We're not going to be giving him 30, 40 touches a game, and then he's getting 30 touches a game.
Yeah, it's insane. So, like, I've always had that opinion is like, why not just give him the rock and just see what he can do for a game? Kind of like a James Cook. Just let him take over a game. Like, make it to where your offensive scheme allows him for that. But maybe that's what's holding the back. I
traded for Bijan last season, and then we saw that. We saw what happens in the Saints game last year, where he dropped what? It was the... Yeah, it was the New Orleans Saints and Atlanta Falcons game last season. And I remember because I had just traded for Bijan Robinson before the deadline. And I'm like, okay, maybe he performs, maybe he doesn't. he goes 16 carries for 91 yards and a touchdown on the ground, and then 3 receptions for 32 yards and a touchdown over the air, and they win that game 24-15. And all of a sudden, you're looking at it as like, man, this is what Bijan can do. And guess what he does the next week? Nothing. Like, there's just been so much inconsistency. Like, everybody thought that Arthur Smith was the problem. Mm-hmm. And then Raheem Morris comes in and is doing the exact same thing. And then with Kyle Pitts, is like, guys, or is it, huh?
Oh, no, exact.
Oh, yeah, Zach. Yeah. So, like, and they even interview after the game. They're talking about Kyle Pitts' production. He's like, he doesn't care about that. He cares about a win. It's like, I'm pretty sure Kyle Pitts cares about whether or not he gets the damn ball, because he's been dealing with this and was told it would be otherwise coming in this year.
No receiver wants to just do cardio for 2-3 hours and just have fun that way.
Yeah, it's the world's most expensive cardio session for the teams that signed them.
I would do that cardio session every day, just because that money is money, right?
Bruh.
So
it's cash.
Yes, sir. Cash. But no, yeah, Atlanta Falcons, they it's so weird for them. It's like they don't, on paper they seem like a strong team.
Yeah. But
in the games you see, it's just like, here's another field goal. We got a touchdown. It's like, it's kind of like,
yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it's just not too many like explosive plays happening, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, there's nothing that's like, yo, they're cooking. Like, you're not seeing like a James Cook run over a game, a Derrick Henry run over a game. You're not seeing like a wide receiver like Justin Jefferson take over a game. Like, we're just seeing just inklings here and there of certain situations. We're like, oh, that was decent. But nothing that's like, yo, they're popping off. There are no highlight reels.
And
like, what's going on?
If you look at their 2 wins, I do want to point this out. Obviously, I can be the salty Eagles fan or whatever. They were 1 catch away from that game being over.
Yeah.
If Saquon catches that ball, the game's over.
Mm-hmm.
They get a defensive pass interference called on the Saints because and by all means, that was a pass interference, but it's like, there was no reason, like, that ball I don't think was even catchable. So, like, there was no reason for him to fucking commit PI, but because of it, that put them in field goal position against the Saints. So it's like, they could realistically just be 0-4 right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting case. That's a good one. They are surviving.
Yeah.
They are surviving, definitely, right now. Overall, this has been a decent week of football. There hasn't been too many catastrophic injuries other than Rashee Rice and, all some other stuff happening.
Yeah.
But, it's not too bad. There's been good waiver wire targets. There's been some interesting, stuff that we talked about in terms of stash, trash, and then sitting, stashing, dropping. We've covered some pretty decent ones, I would say, that makes you think about your league overall and the players that you have on your bench or players that you be, looking to get off your bench and potentially trade or drop completely, Mark Andrews. So, yeah, stuff like that is always good to review. This will be a new segment that we're really trying to get involved and trying to see whether you guys like it and see if this is something that you guys want to see more of. Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share the video in any way, especially to anyone that cares about fantasy or even just wants to see people just talk some football in the background while they're at the gym. But yeah, this has been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Luis, do you want to give any parting words before we head out here?
No, man, I like exactly what you said. Yeah, this is just a companion cast. Obviously, we have the parent cast with Single High Podcast with my brother, and we got all 3, and so that's gonna be where we probably go a little bit more specific into terms of like doing reviews of the games and talking more about general football. But I feel like this cast, it's a little bit longer. I feel like the other ones will be a lot more snap. Obviously, we're like, this is gonna be snappy, but this being the inaugural cast, we want to make sure that we get the point across. We're not going to be explaining the segments as things go on, so it'll get a lot smoother. The transitions will get a lot quicker. But yeah, I mean, aside from that, I like it.
Sounds good. And just remember, there ain't no party like it.